Welcome, and thank you for joining today's meeting of the Chief FOIA Officers Council. Please note this conference is being recorded and all audio connections are muted at this time. If you require technical assistance, please open chat with the associated icon at the bottom of your screen and send a message to the event producer. With that, I'll turn the conference over to Alina Simo, Director of the Office of Government Information Services and Council Co-Chair.
Thank you, Candace, and good morning, everyone, and welcome. As the Director of the Office of Government Information Services, or OGIS, and Co-Chair of the Chief FOIA Officers Council, it is my pleasure to welcome all of you to our Spring 2024 public meeting of the Chief FOIA Officers Council. We last met on November 9th, 2023. I would like to introduce my co-chair, Bobby Talebian, Director of the Office of Information Policy at the Department of Justice. Bobby, over to you.
Virtually, and we look forward to another great packed agenda.
Okay, thanks, Bobby. We are very pleased that so many people are able to join us today. We are simultaneously live streaming this meeting on the the National Archives, or NARA, YouTube channel. Anyone who misses this meeting or wishes to go back and listen to any portion of it may do so at any time.
Thank you. And today, Alina and I will each provide updates on the work that each of our offices have been doing since we last met in November. We're also very happy and very excited to welcome Daniel York from the Open Government Secretariat at GSA, who will be discussing the role he and his staff play in the open government landscape. And you will also hear from the Council's two committees, the Technology Committee and the Committee on Cross-Agency Collaboration and Innovation, on all the great work that they've been doing since we last met. Hope that the work that they've been doing have been great resources, both committees, to all agencies, and we hope today will further inspire more agencies to volunteer, because the strength of the committees and the council rests on your participation.
This is a great opportunity, Bobby, for us to make a plug again for anyone from our federal family that would like to volunteer for either one of the committees. We are always welcoming new members. It is a great cadre of folks who get together and are really trying to improve the FOIA process. So we really hope that you will consider joining either or both committees. We have reserved time at the end of today's session for public comments. We will open telephone lines at the end of our meeting for any oral questions or comments from those members of the public who have registered to participate via our WebEx platform. We ask that you limit your public comments to 3 minutes. Once your 3 minutes expire, we will mute your line and move on to the next commenter or other questions or comments that are pending in our chat. During the course of the meeting, we will pause and check in to see if there are any questions from our agency FOIA colleagues that come in via chat, and we'll share them as appropriate. Important reminder, please send a chat to all panelists to ensure that comments are seen by our moderators. For those of you watching on our NARA YouTube channel, we want to hear from you. If you have any questions or comments related to the agenda of today's meeting, please send them to cfo-council@nara.gov. We will be monitoring that email box for any incoming emails during the meeting. If you have any questions about any other topic regarding the National Archives, you may direct them to public.affairs@nara.gov. Candace, next slide, please.
Excellent. And so now to kick us off, we're very pleased to welcome Daniel York from GSA today. Daniel joined the federal government at the Department of Justice, where he spent nearly 10 years working on IT policy, IT capital planning, and IT governance issues. While at DOJ, he served in leadership positions in a number of multi-agency and government-wide working groups focused on using IT to improve agency mission outcomes. Prior to joining GSA in December 2014, he completed a 6-month detail at OMB's Office of the Chief Information Officer, where he authored several federal IT policy documents. In April 2018, Daniel became the director of the IT Data Transparency Division within GSA's Office of Government-Wide Policy, where he led the FOIA Federal Shared Service and Federal IT Dashboard programs. In September 2023, Daniel took over leadership of the newly created Open Government Secretariat, where he works with the White House, Department of State, USAID, and civil society to promote government transparency, accountability, and civil engagement. Daniel holds a master's degree in business administration with an emphasis on IT management from the University of Texas at Dallas. Daniel, thank you so much. We're really looking forward to your presentation, and over to you.
Great. No, thank you so much for having me, and happy to share a little bit about the work we do here at GSA. I guess we probably go to the next slide. Great. So, in terms of the larger open government initiative, so there's a large international agency called the Open Government Partnership, of which the U.S. government is a founding member. Within that framework, the White House, through the Office of Science Technology Policy, helps provide the leadership support and the policy leadership around open government in general. GSA handles the domestic implementations of our membership in that organization, and the Department of State and USAID handle the international facing aspects. In terms of larger context, OGP, Open Government Partnership, has roughly, I think it was 175 members last I checked, member nations that correspond to roughly 2 billion people. So roughly 1 out of every 4 people on Earth are citizens of a country that are a member of the Open Government Partnership. So very happy to be supporting that and the U.S.'s role in implementing it. Moving on to the next slide, a little bit about the team. So that's us. That's all of us. We are small but mighty. I handle the international, inter, and intra-government coordination, as well as the 5th National Action Plan. Courtney and Laura handle our multi-stakeholder forum and community engagement. Yvette and Alexis are working on planning for the 6th National Action Plan. And then Arthur and Avis are working around the idea of the Federal Advisory Committee and then migrating our website. And the next slide. So what we do is really focused on those national action plans, right? The National Action Plan, the 5th National Action Plan was released in December 2022. So we're in the process of implementing the various commitments. There's 36 commitments across. I'll talk a little bit about those in a minute, next slides. But 36 commitments are broken down into 70 subcommitments. And so tracking progress and how agencies are doing across those, including the several FOIA commitments in there as well. We're also working towards the 6th National Action Plan and the multi-stakeholder forum and around that to make sure we get a good co-creation process in place. And lastly, it's stakeholder engagement, not only with our federal stakeholders, agency to agency, but also our public stakeholders by doing events like this and getting the word out about how the public can be involved in open government is, of course, very important. Lastly, we host and maintain the Open Government website that I just mentioned was migrating to the GSA platform. So a lot of really good activity that we handle here on the domestic aspects. Next slide. In terms of the 5th National Action Plan, we had a number of updates since August. So in August, the August update was our first time. We weren't actually officially even a team at that point. The order that created us wasn't signed until September. But you can see as a part of the February update how we were able to get all of the missing updates in from that initial beta version. We were able to find all the POCs and actually do a lot of good work in terms of closing those updates as well. And I'll put a link into where the commitment tracker is when I'm not speaking. All those updates did go live in March 2027. We expect the next round of updates to go live in August 2024. Next slide. Great. So in terms of the commitments themselves, I mentioned earlier, there's 36 commitments within the 5th National Action Plan. We've broken those down into 70 subcommitments. You can sort of see the chart there on the left into how those are broken down by the 5 themes. We also have a chart here about how those commitments are broken into the commitments that the Open Government Partnership internal review mechanism labeled certain commitments as being particularly high value. And so we have those high value commitments there as well so that the public can see those. Jumping down, we just Monday released a self-assessment of how we believe the U.S. government is doing in implementing our 5th National Action Plan. It touches also on the code creation process. That is now out for 60 days. Well, I guess now 58 days of public comment. I'll be happy to put a link to that in the chat after. But we do hope that the public reads our self-assessment and provides feedback so we can incorporate everyone's thoughts and interests into it. 75 countries. I said 100. Good. Thank you, Alex, in the chat. Apologies. So for self-assessment, I mentioned it's been published in the Federal Register. It's open for a period of time, and we'll be reviewing those comments, working with GSA leadership to incorporate them to the final draft, and then getting that published both on our website, but also submitted to the Open Government Partnership. Next slide. So the 6th National Action Plan is a tentative schedule of where we're looking to head with it. We're just finished up the sort of the initial planning and launching phases inside of government as we move into setting up our multi-stakeholder forum and the committee I'll be talking about in a minute. We will be going through the ideation phase and gathering feedback. Moving into next year, next calendar year, next fiscal year, we'll be doing the drafting, actually writing the document. Then that includes reviews and public feedback, and then publication, and finally close out. So again, this is just another sort of high level what we're looking to get out of the 6th National Action Plan. I'll just read it for yourself here, but the real key here is building trust with civil society. It's the theme for the entire 6th National Plan, and ensuring a true co-creation process through the committee I'll be talking about in a slide from now, to build something that is both valuable to civil society, to the public, that also helps the government grow in our open government commitments and priorities. And then near the last here. Great. Next slide. So the advisory committee, we're in the process of getting this out. You'll see a public notice will be going out here in the next couple of weeks that officially announces the advisory committee. That notice will include both the initial announcement that it's out there, as well as a call for nominations. So if folks are interested in nominating yourself or others for the committee, please watch the Federal Register notice, and more to come on that. Next slide. We've opened a federal community practice. I hinted on it a little bit earlier. We had this slide's a little out of date. I didn't notice that. Our last meeting was not in January. That was our first meeting, was in January. We've also met in March and have another one planned for May, where we bring together best practices and lessons learned through a community of open government champions across agencies to grow our open government paralysis within government, and also give us the federal side of the multi-stakeholder forum by which to later draft commitments and receive feedback. So as we build up the public side through the advisory committee, as well as the public events we do, building up the federal side too, to be the counterpart to that, to ensure the best possible plan for NAP6. I'll say last but not least, a call to action, as it were. The next slide is to staying connected. It's really important that we continue to have sessions like this, but also that we hear from members of the public and civil society at large. We've opened a new OpenGov Civ listserv, and the next slide should give you instructions on how to join. Ta-da! It's like magic. It's just like that. So you send an email to that very long email address with join OpenGov Civ in the subject line. It'll then respond to you with, it says 48 hours because that's the metric on the SLA, but it's usually within a couple of minutes that you have to hit OK, like respond to that email saying OK, and then you're automatically added. There's no approval process. And with that, I believe I'm at the end of my session, and I believe we're taking questions at the end of the event, but happy to answer any questions in chat that I can. And in the meantime, I'll turn it back to our hosts.
Thank you so much, Daniel. We're really excited to continue to partner with you and work with you and stakeholders on the development of open government partnership commitments. And I hope that and encourage all the agencies online to join the listserv and we can stay current and participate.
Bobby, I'm just going to pause for a second, ask Daniel, not York, but Daniel Levinson, my colleague in OJIS, have there been any chat comments that have come in from our agency FOIA partners? I don't see anything. I just wanted to triple check before we move on.
No, there is one comment that notes there's 75 countries in the Open Government Partnership, not 175. But nothing from internal to the government FOIA partners.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And Daniel York, thank you again for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you again for the opportunity.
Yep. Bobby, back over to you.
Thank you. Go to the next slide. And we can go ahead and skip over to the next slide. There we go. So as I said, we wanted to provide updates since of OIP and OJIS efforts and work since our last meeting. And of course, this time of year, I share my gratitude to all the agencies and thank you for all the work that you put in to compile your annual FOIA reports and Chief FOIA Officer reports as we've closed out another year of reporting. Agencies' annual FOIA reports and Chief FOIA Officer reports are now available online. All of the annual FOIA report data, of course, is on FOIA.gov. And we really greatly appreciate the collaboration with all agencies in ensuring that we're compliant with our reporting obligations. Quick reminder that the quarter two annual report data, quarterly report data is due next week. If your agency will be delayed in submitting that data, please let us know so that we make sure that once you do have it up there in FOIA.gov, it's published publicly. And of course, we're always available to advise, answer, or help with any questions regarding reporting. Please reach out to our FOIA compliance staff. Next slide. So now that we have fiscal year 2023 data available, I just wanted to highlight some high-level data points and some insight on what fiscal year 2023 looked like. Of course, we will be also publishing soon in the coming weeks our comprehensive summary of the annual FOIA reports, which will break down each of the data elements, each of the data points that are in the reports. But we can see that this was a historical year for FOIA. In last fiscal year, we hit a milestone of breaking for first time ever, receiving over 1 million requests. And as you can see, this was a nearly 30% increase from the number of requests that were received in fiscal year 2022. Next slide. Well, there are 120 agencies, and this is certainly a staggering number of incoming requests. 5 agencies really received overwhelmingly the most requests in the government. DHS, DOJ, VA, NARA, and DOD received 82% of all of these requests, with other agencies receiving the latter 18%. Next slide. So in order to meet the demand and matching the demand of the incoming, agencies also hit a historical milestone in the number of requests they processing over 1 million requests and slightly more than the number of requests that were received during the fiscal year. And this was a 28% increase from the number of requests that were processed from the prior fiscal year. Next slide. And similarly, and logically, the same 5 agencies that received the most requests processed 82% of all the requests that the government received. Next slide. So the result of all of this in fiscal year 2023 was a slight decrease in the number of requests that were backlogged. And so we were able to achieve backlog reduction this fiscal year. Again, these are just some high-level statistics. Be on the lookout for our annual FOIA report summary, which will cover all the data points from the processing times, the dispositions of requests, proactive disclosures, and the costs for administering the FOIA. Next slide. We also wanted to take a reminder on the requirement that we all share, the statutory requirement to provide estimated date of completions to requesters upon request. One of the most common inquiries that OIP and I believe OGIS gets from the public is attempts to try to get estimated dates of completion. We do have guidance on providing estimated dates of completion, and of course are always available to help agencies that are having trouble formulating a estimated date of completion for requests. And we'll soon we'll preview that we'll soon be issuing new guidance on this topic with regard to the administrative appeal process. Next slide. So last meeting, we were excited to announce that in October, just a month prior to our last meeting, we had released the new DOJ search tool on FOIA.gov that helps the public locate information or the best agency where they should direct their FOIA requests. As hopefully you know, the tool contains 6 predefined user journeys on commonly sought types of records. And it also allows users to enter their own search terms where a combination of logic-based and machine learning functionality provides the suggested documents or the agencies for the user. And so now that we've had the system for some time, we've been reviewing the data analytics on how it's being used, and like to share some of that today. So just last month, we hit over 50,000 queries of the users of the search tool. And we found that most users are independently selecting one of our predefined user journeys, 58% in fact. And an additional 14% are being put in those user journeys based off the search terms they're submitting. And this was good for us because it reinforced what we observed during discovery, that a lot of the requesters that are coming to FOIA.gov are looking for common types of records or common themes. The remaining 28% who entered search terms received a response from the tool with regard to an agency or document, averaging just over 1 agency per query and 3 publicly available documents, which we hope indicates that they are getting targeted responses that are helpful. But we will continue to share our observations of how the new tool is being used. Next slide. And of course, as we mentioned, we're using our observations and this data to continue to refine and build on the tool that we built. In October, when we announced the launch, we announced that this is just the initial release. And so we do have plans for a search tool 2.0. And we've already begun working on that. We've observed from the data analytics that most users are looking for example, law enforcement records. And so that is a now user journey that we're working on as a predefined tab. This type of we've observed this may include records about law enforcement policy, records on individual cases, and records on enforcement in different areas of law, such as environmental law and consumer protection. The new user journey will also provide clarifying information to the user about how to find commonly sought information that is not available through FOIA, such as court records and state and local police records. We're also exploring, as part of our build to the 2.0 version, ways for agencies to ensure that the data that's powering the machine learning stays current. So we're planning to have new proactive disclosure guidance to establish more structured and standard ways of posting FOIA logs and posting frequently requested records that are subject to the proactive disclosure requirements of the FOIA. And we hope this will establish not only a better powered tool, but also make those records themselves more accessible. And ideally, we can get to the point where agencies can provide this information in nearly real time to update the tool so that we could ensure that information that's of high interest, a post that's been posted appears as part of the search results and as soon as possible. As always, we very much appreciate the collaboration with agencies and us with the public in developing these tools, and would very much welcome continued feedback as we work to make them even better. Next slide. We're also very excited to highlight that the FOIA business standards that we have been working with and have worked with the council for some time now are pending public comment on regulations.gov. We welcome comments on those draft business standards through May 17th. And then we look forward to finalizing these standards to help agencies and the public to streamline the development of FOIA technology to best meet agency and public needs. Next slide. Finally, I wanted to highlight the recent GAO report that examined backlogs across the federal government. The report was just issued this past March and looked at the causes of backlog increases and how agencies have worked to address them. It also assessed existing resources related to backlog reduction and described the perspectives of government and non-government stakeholders. In conducting this engagement, GAO looked at agency chief FOIA officer reports and annual FOIA reports on FOIA.gov, met with agencies and non-agency stakeholders, and reviewed existing guidance and resources. I'd like to highlight in particular reporting data in this engagement, which is something we've observed in prior GAO engagements, which reinforces not only the importance of these reports and the work that you put into them, for the public, but also for congressional oversight of agency FOIA administration. Next slide. The culmination of the report that GAO issued included 4 recommendations for OIP that fall into 2 general buckets. The first 2 recommendations suggested OIP issued guidance to agencies on creating backlog reduction plans. We were in fact based off of a DOJ backlog reduction initiative already working on putting together best practices and guidance on the development of effective backlog reduction plans. And so we look forward to holding a best practices workshop in the upcoming months to share some of that and have agencies invite agencies to share some of their best practices for developing backlog reduction plans, and also in issuing guidance to agencies on how best and the most effective ways to produce backlog reduction plans that would be impactful. The other 2 recommendations focused on the agency's processing times as reported in their annual FOIA reports, specifically for decentralized agencies in calculating their agency overall processing times, average and median processing times. In accordance to our guidance and in the annual FOIA report handbook, agencies that are decentralized should be calculating those based off true averages and medians and not an average of an average or a median of a median. And so while we do look at that here at OIP, like a spot scan, it's what we've been doing. Going forward, we're going to see how we can also help validate that and examine that more closely in our review process. But of course, the ultimate responsibility of the reporting data is, of course, with the agencies. Next slide. And with that, if there are no other questions, if there's no questions in the chat, I wasn't following the chat. Happy to answer any questions in the chat first, I guess, actually.
Bobby, there is one question from our colleague from EPA, Tim Epp, on guidance for developing backlog reduction plans. Will you invite comment from other federal agencies on the draft guidance before finalizing?
Yes, we'll invite, definitely invite comments and want to work with agencies, and that's also part of the idea of having the best practices workshop before the guidance. So stay tuned and we'll be in touch.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So it's my turn. Some updates from OGIS, the FOIA Ombudsman's Office. Next slide, please, Candace. So since we last met, OGIS has continued to be very active. In the last 6 months, we have posted 16 blog posts on the FOIA Ombudsman, which if you have not already joined to follow, please do so today. We have posted over 100 times on X, formerly Twitter. We have hosted 3 FOIA Advisory Committee meetings, more on that in a moment. We have engaged with agencies on 15 different compliance issues. we have reviewed 31 agency regulations. We have opened 2,636 new requests for assistance and closed 2,835 requests. And we have held virtual training sessions of our popular dispute resolution for FOIA professionals for 2 different agencies. And we also had a very successful Sunshine Week event on AI, which is available on the NARA YouTube channel if you missed it. And I do invite everyone to go there and take a listen. It was actually a very successful event and lots of great panelists, including our very own Bobby Talibian and Eric Stein, who will be presenting later on. We are pleased that the efficiencies we're gaining through our new case management system that we have implemented to help track, manage, and process our cases has helped us to keep up with increases in our cases and maintain positive levels of productivity. Next slide, please. It's hard to believe, but we are only 2 months away from the end of the 5th term of the FOIA Advisory Committee. The 3 subcommittees, implementation, modernization, and resources have all been hard at work. In fact, earlier this year and at the end of last year, the committee had already passed 2 recommendations. 2023-01, the committee recommended that OIP issue guidance stating that whenever an agency withholds information pursuant to Exemption 5, the agency should identify corresponding privileges invoked. And the recommendation, that was passed earlier this year, recommendation 2024-01, called for the Office of Information Policy to issue a draft model determination letter written and endorsed by the FOIA Advisory Committee as a best practice reference for agencies. And this most recent recommendation, 2024-01, that I just mentioned, was the first time the committee formally solicited and obtained public input and feedback during the shaping of this document. So we were very pleased to see that process. At the April 4th committee meeting, which we held earlier this month, 11 additional recommendations were discussed and passed. If you missed that meeting, it is up on our NARA YouTube channel, and I invite everyone to take a listen. At our next committee meeting on May 9th, we anticipate 3 additional recommendations to be discussed and passed from the implementation subcommittee. This should be our final set and will bring the grand total to 16 recommendations for this term. The last 2 meetings of the FOIA Advisory Committee are Thursday, May 9th and Thursday, June 13th, both beginning at 10 a.m. They will be virtual and live streamed on our NARA YouTube channel. Please mark your calendars and remember to visit our website for instructions to register on Eventbrite. As always, the FOIA Advisory Committee welcomes and encourages your ideas and suggestions at any time. Please let us know your ideas for improving the FOIA process. We definitely want to hear from all of you, those hardworking FOIA professionals out there who are facing FOIA realities on a regular basis. And please keep up all the fantastic work that you're already doing. Next slide, please. I just want to mention that last month, on March 29th, 2024, we published the FOIA Ombuds Observer on the Neither Confirm Nor Deny, or GLOMAR. And the link is there on the slide. So please go ahead and visit that link. And we hope that you will be reading it. It is geared really primarily for our public stakeholders, but we certainly encourage all agencies to take a look as well. I think we've included some very good tips. So please check that out. Next slide, please. I just want to take a minute to solicit from our fellow government FOIA professionals watching us today. There are a number of you there. We are soliciting a working group that we would like to put together to work on a CFL Council charter and bylaws. And Bobby and I would really welcome any and all volunteers for that effort. It's really a long time coming. We've been wanting to do this for a while. It's definitely time. So we hope you will consider volunteering. Please drop a chat in today's WebEx chat, and we will take note of that. Or please contact me or Bobby directly, and we will be happy to sign you up to the working group. Next slide, please. I hope that all of you take advantage of the many resources available on our website and that you tune in to all of our past public meetings available on the NARA YouTube channel. OGIS often solicits input from FOIA community, and we want to hear both from requesters and agency FOIA professionals. Again, we invite all of you to subscribe to our blog, the FOIA Ombudsman, and please follow our X feed. Our goal is to help improve the FOIA process for both requesters and agency FOIA professionals. FOIA programs, as we know, are only as good as the FOIA professionals. So I want to thank all of you for everything that you do to fulfill the requirements of the FOIA in each of your agencies. Next slide, please. Bobby, over to you.
Thank you, Alina. Let's now turn to report outs from our two committees, both of which have been hard at work since we last met. You'll first hear from our co-chairs of the Committee on Cross-Agency Collaboration Innovation, or we like to say COCACI, Abby Oli, and Michael Bell. And then they'll hand off the baton to the Technology Committee co-chair, Eric Stein.
And before we launch into report outs, we want to take this opportunity to announce a sad day. Eric Stein is stepping down from his Technology Committee co-chair role as he has been asked to step into another position at the State Department. We are grateful for Eric's exceptional dedication and hard work as the founding co-chair of the Technology Committee. Eric's ability to collaborate, communicate, and steer the committee towards several important accomplishments has been unwavering. The successes achieved by the Technology Committee under Eric's guidance is a testament to his outstanding leadership, abilities, and relentless work ethic. Thank you again, Eric, for your tireless efforts, dedication, and commitment to the successes of the Technology Committee.
And I share those thanks, but also very excited and pleased to announce that Gorka Garcia Molina, FOIA officer at NIH and a current member of the Technology Committee, has agreed to take over as co-chair. Gorka has already been involved with several different working groups, and he and Mike Sarich will be great together. Mike has promised to show him the co-chair ropes. We appreciate Gorka for volunteering and would like to thank him in advance for the anticipated hard work he will be putting in this co-chair role. Next slide, and handing it over to Abby and Michael.
Thanks, Bobby. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Bell. I'm the FOIA officer for the Department of Transportation. I think Abby and I spoke over each other just a moment ago. So Abby, if you'd like to introduce yourself again.
Sorry about that. I'm Abby Oyewole, and I'm the Chief FOIA Officer at the Consumer Product Safety Commission and co-chair with Mike on COCACI.
Great, thanks. And I don't think we have any formal slides, but if we can just go to the next slide in case there's a placeholder there while we speak. And I did see there was, yeah, so that was it. So you can go back then, apologize. Yeah, I did see we have a question in the chat, so I'll address that in our introduction. I'm gonna get us started just speaking about the Cross-Agency Collaboration and Innovation Committee. It was a mouthful from the beginning of the last 3 years, but I think COCACI has now taken hold as the name of the committee. And I think it's a good testament for all the hard work everyone's done, that if you say COCACI or you see there's a meeting from COCACI coming up, they know what it is. And so I'd like to thank everyone on the committee for doing that. Basically, our committee first met just over 3 years ago, and we've been meeting since March of 2021. And regarding the minutes and the postings, we actually have had discussions on where we want to house our documents. So it's really just it's a transmission issue on our part, and I apologize for that. So we'll get stuff posted. We'll at least get it to the OGIS website for now, but we are discussing the best place for our products to be placed so that people out in the FOIA community can access them. So again, apologies for not updating the website, but we will take care of that. I mentioned that we first started meeting back in 2021. The first thing we did was a lot of hard work and organizing, which was basically forming 3 subcommittees. And we're going to hear updates on each subcommittee coming up in a moment. But the subcommittees are the Government Information Specialist Professionalism Subcommittee. That was one of the big ones coming out of the 2020 FOIA Advisory Committee, where there's a recommendation to take a look at the job series. The other one, since remember we were formed in late 2020 with our charter, was the Pandemic and Virtual FOIA Office Subcommittee. That was supposed to take the lessons that we learned during the pandemic from going fully virtual and trying to bring them into the new hybrid offices that we all have pretty much transitioned to. And finally, the third subcommittee is on resources. That subcommittee takes a look at ways, especially for smaller FOIA offices, to get access to the resources out there that allow them to do their jobs better. So during 2021, we formed the subcommittees, we did a lot of planning, we formed our objectives and set our goals for Coxsackie. And then by 2022, then we wanted to have a good solid foundation, so we did a lot of data gathering. We conducted a survey of FOIA professionals throughout the government, both online and at the ASAP, American Society of Access Professionals training conference. Committee members did interviews with FOIA leadership from around the government. And we had a session at the FOIA training conference for ASAP, where it was like a town hall session where we heard directly from FOIA professionals, just to hear, what was good about their jobs, what's bad about their jobs. And it was really even better than the survey to gather information because we were hearing from people directly. And while we heard some negatives as people were letting us know the challenges they were facing, we also heard a lot of good things that you can hear directly from them that people want to do a good job. But some of them do feel hamstrung by, a lack of resources. They want more training, and they had questions about career advancement. And I think that these are all the things that Coxsackie is trying to take a look at to try to produce to help, agency FOIA personnel do their jobs better. And then finally, for 2023, it was time that we really wanted to start putting products out there, making a difference, and not just meeting, but putting things out there for the FOIA professional to take a look at. The big thing from 2023, besides going to the National Training Conference, having a town hall, was that the Resources Subcommittee held a best practices workshop in October of 2023. And that was very well attended. We had several panels where we had people from all over the government come and talk about how they planned the resources for their FOIA offices, how they looked to gather things to help them do their jobs. And that was a very, very good session there. In 2024, we're now planning to have more products out there. Both the GIS subcommittee and the Pandemic Virtual FOIA Office Subcommittee will be producing papers soon and other things, which you'll hear about shortly when we get into the subcommittee updates. And finally, Coxsackie is going to conduct a follow-up survey from the one we did 2 years ago. And this is just to make sure that we're still on the right track, we're still looking at the right targets, and we just want to hear again from the FOIA professionals out there to make sure that we're doing our job to take a look at things that concern them. And literally about an hour before this meeting started, I sent an email to ASAP to lobby to make sure we can get another Coxsackie and maybe technology combined town hall at the training conference coming up in June, because that was really a good venue for FOIA professionals to let us know what they need to do their jobs. And that's really Coxsackie's #1 purpose. Okay, we're going to talk about the 3 subcommittees now, provide updates for what they've done. I'm going to start with the GIS subcommittee. Again, that came directly out of the FOIA Advisory Committee. And the GIS subcommittee is really just looking at ways to promote job initiatives and career trajectories for FOIA professionals. As most of you know, the GIS job series is fairly new. It's been around only for about a decade or so. And we just want to build on that and to identify areas where we can coordinate with the agencies and other organizations like DOJ, OIP, OGIS to try to, work on the job series there. Now, the subcommittee did form several objectives that they wanted to work on. Very specifically, they wanted to focus on recruiting strategies. How do we find the best people to fill the FOIA jobs that are out there? What can we do to locate them? Because sometimes it's not just, you're not just able to put a job announcement out there. You actually have to go out there and find them, recruit them, tell them, why this is a good career field for them to be in. Next, once you find them, you got to find a way to hire them and keep them in your office once you do find them. Because if they don't have a career path, if they don't know, I'm not talking as a careerist, but you do want to know where you're going to go in the future. Where may I be in 5 years? And that's something that a lot of GIS professionals, sometimes they see an artificial ceiling. Where are they going to go? And so the GIS subcommittee, they've been looking at having more ladder positions, 12, 13, 14, something like that. We did that here at DOT last year, and we were able to attract a lot of good applicants for that. Once we went from simply applying for, say, or putting out a GS12 announcement, we had a 12, 13, 14 announcement, and we had a lot of great applicants. Another thing that the subcommittee looked at was uniform pay scale. We found that at some agencies, a GS13 was doing the same job that a GS11 was doing at another agency. So we want to make sure there's some conformity there, so that we say if you have the qualifications, if you're GS12, these are the type of roles that you can and should be doing in your job. And finally, they're trying to come up with key components of for FOIA professionals. There's been some attempts at it before where people, they want some kind of certification testing, just ways that we can tell that if you're a FOIA professional, here's what you should know, here's the kind of training you should get, and just what to expect. So that's really the targets of the subcommittee. And over the last couple of years, they have made a lot of good progress. I mentioned the survey that we conducted and one we're going to do again. It was the GIS subcommittee members who went out and spoke with and interviewed FOIA leadership from around the government. What are they looking for in a FOIA professional? What do they want to bring to their office, and how can we put it down on paper so that people can see this is what you should aspire to if you want to work in FOIA, and you need have a good basis of certification there. This summer, they're going to be putting out a white paper. We'll make sure it goes on the website once it's out there. And the white paper is in final editing right now. We are just making some tweaks, getting it through Abby and myself, DOJ and OGIS, and it should be coming out within the next month or two, hopefully by the June training conference for ASAP, so that we can make a big splash at the conference there. Other than that, this year, they're going to try to participate in the survey questions. Again, make sure that they're on target for what they're looking at improving. And then finally, they're thinking about having a online or open event, just like the resources subcommittee did. But this might be sort of like a GIS career day, just a day where they can focus on the career field, bring in experts from HR, FOIA leadership, just things that we can talk about the FOIA career field and get feedback and give guidance on people who are interested in maybe even entering the field or continuing within the field so they can advance in their careers. So that's all I have for the GIS subcommittee. I'll now turn things over to Abby.
Thank you, Mike. And I will read out updates from the pandemic subcommittee and the resources subcommittee. So for the pandemic subcommittee, the chair is Shante Stanley. Mike told you a bit about that subcommittee, but it is focused on taking lessons learned from the remote work environment during COVID-19 to transform FOIA offices to thrive in a virtual environment. They emphasize identifying tactics, techniques, and procedures necessary for effective virtual telework to process agency FOIA responses. And to that end, in 2022 and 2023, they surveyed government FOIA professionals, compiled data from surveys distributed to FOIA professionals, and analyzed the data, the surveys that Mike mentioned that we handed out during the ASAP, and a lot of you responded to, which was very, very helpful. After reviewing those surveys, the pandemic committee subcommittee drafted best practices for transitioning from an in-office location to a telework virtual location, and hybrid work as well. And they are in the process of finalizing that best practices document. They received input from committee members, and they will send it up for review with the target date of getting that out in the summer of this year. And their next steps, they want to be a part of that survey for this year's ASAP to survey FOIA professionals to gather information on how their transition back to in-office work has been, and what other post-pandemic work issues have come up for them that can be studied and possibly improved through collaboration. And then for our resources subcommittee, which is chaired by Brandon Gaylord, they identify opportunities for standardization of a variety of resources that should be made available to FOIA offices, with that special emphasis on small government agencies that Mike mentioned. Last year, they held the best practices workshop in October, excuse me, with FOIA leaders from across the government who discussed how to build or rebuild a successful agency information program, FOIA technology, where it can help, where does it fall short, and innovative FOIA staffing opportunities. It was a really great program, and we had a high attendance, and a transcript of that program will be out shortly on FOIA.gov. And to follow up the success of that best practices workshop, the subcommittee is now looking at developing a FOIA officer reference library. The initial subjects that they're considering in phase one would include FOIA management, acquisitions, and SOP documents. And the timeline for that phase one rollout of the library is 12 to 18 months. Right now, there's discussion to have it hosted on FOIA.gov. That hasn't been finalized yet, but we are looking forward to getting that reference library. And then in addition to our outstanding subcommittee work, we're also putting together a federal FOIA hiring guide called the FOIA Toolkit, with the goal of harmonizing FOIA hiring across the federal government. Right now, it's in the drafting stage and has a target publication date of June 2024. So that concludes the readout from COCACI. Thank you to all of our subcommittee chairs and members who are working to advance federal FOIA, because collaboration creates better processes and output for FOIA professionals as well as the public. And if you're not currently a COCACI member, we invite you to join us. We always welcome new members. There's so much to do, and we have monthly meetings with really lively discussions. At the end, we always leave time for people to crowdsource solutions to individual members' issues in their own FOIA agency. And it's a lot of fun. So if you are interested in joining us, feel free to email Mike or myself. I put the link to our subcommittee, our committee webpage in the chat. And thank you very much for joining us. And now I'll throw it back to Alina. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just say, any questions? I wasn't able to follow the chat while we were talking. I guess we'll give the opportunity now, or I guess maybe later.
Yes, if you both could please stick around, that would be great. There are a number of questions in the chat from the public side, so I don't see any chat questions from our government colleagues. But if you could stick around, that would be wonderful. And I just want to correct one thing that Abby had mentioned at the beginning. Everything that we're posting now related to the Chief FOIA Officer Council is on FOIA.gov. Before, we had been posting it on both the OGIS website and OIP's website, but now everything is on FOIA.gov. So please take a look at that there.
And like I said, we'll get better at posting stuff, I promise.
No worries. You guys are doing a great job. Thank you again. And I'm now going to turn it over to Eric Stein, who has already been introduced. So Eric, over to you.
Good morning, Alina. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present here today. My name is Eric Stein, and I'm the co-chair of the Technology Committee. I'm giving a few updates about the work we've been doing since the last meeting, including an upcoming event that may be of interest. So may you please go to the next slide. First, some background and context about the Chief FOIA Officer Technology Committee. We were established in 2018. Our first meeting was actually shortly after the September 2018 date here on the slide. And the Technology Committee was created in response to a recommendation from the 2016 to 2018 FOIA Advisory Committee. So it's a testament to the work done by the FOIA Advisory Council and Committee. And since then, it's hard to believe it's been over 5 years. We've formed a variety of working groups and held a series of events, and have been able to develop some guidance papers that are on the FOIA.gov link provided here on this slide. But you can go to FOIA.gov and look at the Technology Committee page. At the moment, the the Technology Committee has 6 active working groups. Those 6 are our data working group, our 5-way compliance and collaborative tools working group, FOIA and classified information, FOIA IT platforms, search and AI, and technology best practices. We have a FOIA reference model working group that completed a deliverable last year, and since it still is available as a body, but the 6 are the active, previous 6 mentioned, the ones actively working. And I bring this up because when we talk on the next, coming up soon, about upcoming events, the work we've been doing has been focused in the area of those 6 working groups. The Technology Committee continues to meet monthly, and we have approximately 50 representatives from 25 agencies. We are always looking to have new members join us. So if you're interested in technology in any of the areas just mentioned for the working group, or just generally interested in understanding some of the discussions around these areas, we highly encourage you to volunteer or just come join our meetings. And that could be the extent of your commitment, or if you're interested in joining one of our working groups, they're always looking for additional support as well. I have to say, for the past 5+ years now, the monthly Chief FOIA Officer Technology Committee meetings were an hour. I very much look forward to every month. Innovation and engagement in the FOIA community on how to improve FOIA programs throughout the government, and even specific agency issues as they emerged. Next slide, please. So I just mentioned we're always recruiting. So if you're interested, please contact OIP or OGIS and consider joining the Technology Committee. I want to talk now about the Next Gen FOIA Tech Showcase 2.0. So next month, we are hosting a 2-day event for a Next Gen FOIA Tech Showcase. And we, just as a background, we had hosted a Next Gen Tech Showcase 2 years ago, and it was all virtual event. And the way that the showcase is structured and set up is that there was a request for information that was issued where companies could submit papers, and based on the criteria in that request for information, saying that they're interested in participating. The showcase allows the private sector and companies to showcase their capabilities based on the criteria in the request for information. So what technology do you have for case management, or a variety of other topics. So the one from 2022, we were very much fortunate to have really good turnout and participation. And the papers we received, I believe we posted online, but definitely the videos as well. Each company was allowed to make up to a 5-minute video. At the showcase event, we play those videos and then allow agencies that attend to ask questions of those companies about their capabilities, their videos. And this year's theme for 2024 is twofold. One is to look really at the FOIA case processing and backlog challenges or capabilities that technology can offer in assisting in processing cases. And the second is looking at advanced technology, including but not limited to artificial intelligence, or AI, which is very much promising in the FOIA information management field. And we want to better understand what capabilities are available right now, or will be offered in the future, possibly by vendors, so that government agencies can better understand and plan and for their needs as well. These sessions are excellent collaboration, offer opportunities for collaboration between the government and the private sector. And I think we have already received we received great interest in this year's event as well. And the request for information, the link's available here. It's publicly available. Ended just recently on April 13th. So very much looking forward to another successful event for the Next Gen FOIA Showcase.
Eric, if you don't mind, I'm just going to interrupt for one quick
Sure.
second. This is hot breaking news. Because we've had so many vendors express interest in participating in the Next Gen FOIA Tech Showcase, just yesterday, we made a decision to expand it to 3 days. So we're going to hold it on Tuesday, May 14th, Wednesday, May 15th, and Thursday, May 16th. So hopefully folks can join us for all 3 days. There'll be slightly shorter days, which is good. Thanks.
That's terrific news. So glad to hear there's such great turnout. And it sounds like there'll be a variety of options for agencies to hear from vendors as agencies really are looking at process technology and the different means of improving case processing. And it's not technology alone that's going to solve many of the problems or that we're facing with the challenges of backlogs, increased requests, increased volume of electronic data, but really understanding what are the challenges, what are the processes, what are the workflows, what are the options available with technology, and through that, the innovation that ensues to determine possible paths ahead for the best possible performance in agencies and their FOIA programs based on available resources and timelines and so forth. So very exciting, a third day of the Next Gen Showcase 2.0. Finally, as previously mentioned, this will be my final meeting as the co-chair of the Technology Committee. I recently started a temporary assignment as the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary in my bureau here at the State Department, which is a great opportunity and I'm very excited about. However, as a result, I stepped down as the Technology Co-Chair and just wanted to say thank you to Bobby, OIP, Alina, OGIS, to my co-chair, Mike Sarich, to our various members of the Tech Committee, our sibling committee in COCACI, the FOIA Advisory Council, FOIA Advisory Committee, the participants in our Next Gen Showcase in the past, the public inquiries, the ones from the private sector. Thank you to our FOIA program here at State as well. Really have enjoyed tremendously this opportunity, and I'm actually very happy to hear that Gorka will be serving as the co-chair. As a former member of the FOIA Advisory Committee, he's bringing great perspective of both from federal FOIA perspective and also having worked with engagement with the private sector and the public. So thank you again for this opportunity. The best of luck moving forward, and I will be around for questions at the end of the session as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. We really appreciate it. So we're definitely way ahead of schedule, but we definitely will leave time for public comments at the end as we normally do. Candace, next slide, please. So we have now reached the public comment section of our meeting. I do know there have been a number of chat comments that I'm going to ask Dan Levinson to read out loud. So hopefully the questions will be directed to different participants today, and hopefully they're all still hanging around and are ready to respond. We look forward to hearing from any member of the public who has an idea or comment they would like to share. I also want to remind everyone that you may also submit written comments to the council using the comment submission form on the OGIS website. If you have written comments for the Chief FOIA Officers Council, please visit OGIS's public comments portal at archives.gov/OGIS/public-comments and direct your comments to the Chief FOIA Officers Council. Please note that all comments submitted to the Chief FOIA Officers Council are shared with OIP for consideration of posting on the council's website on FOIA.gov. Oral comments presented to the Chief FOIA Officers Council are available in the meeting transcript that would be posted on, to the FOIA minutes, to the minutes that would be posted on FOIA.gov and in the videos of the council's meetings that are available on NARA's YouTube channel. So at this point, Bobby, anything to add or correct me on? because I kind of fumbled that last one. No transcript, but we will be making a
We'll have minutes.
set of minutes available.
That's right, and that's perfect. I think we're ready for public comments.
Okay, so I know we have a number of chat comments. So Candace, I'm going to ask you to hold off on opening up our telephone lines for a minute and turn to our colleague. Dan, over to you. And
Hi.
if you could please read out loud. I know we have a number of comments. Go ahead, please.
Absolutely. Hi. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, you're a little soft. A little
I'm
louder.
still a
would be
little
great.
soft. Okay.
Oh, much better.
All right. Let me hold the microphone up to my face. So I'm going to start with the two more technical comments. We had one asking about the ability to save the closed captioning from the WebEx, and I would like the event producer let them know that that would have to have been turned on before the meeting. So I'd like to remind everyone in attendance that we are simulcasting this on YouTube, and the closed captions on that simulcast are on and will be captured in the recording on YouTube forever. The second question on the technical side was if the FOIA ombuds will join Threads or Mastodon instead of Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter. And I would like to say that we would be open to that as soon as the National Archives investigates and confirms that those are platforms that NARA as a whole is open to. As it stands, NARA does not use those platforms, and we are not able to use them until until the main agency approves them. And with that, more substantive comments. First, will OIP add new commitments to a National Action Plan 5.5 to implement in 2025 while a new plan is co-created? For example, would OIP commit to issuing guidance recommending a release to all policy modeled on the successful approach adopted by the State Department?
Thank you for that question. And of course, we're open to additional open government commitments and look forward to working with Daniel York's and his team on co-creation of the next National Action Plan and also any other open government initiatives that we're going to take on at the Department of Justice. And certainly we'll consider during those discussions and engagements things like the proactive disclosure policies.
Okay, thank you. So speaking of proactive disclosure, have any agencies proactively disclosed the records that have been hosted on FOIA online on their FOIA reading rooms or data.gov as structured data? And if so, which ones? And if not, are there any pointers as to where the public can access those files that were on FOIA online?
So I don't have that. I don't have that information specific to each agency. We did before FOIA online sunsetted. We did send a memo to agencies reminding them of their obligations of posting certain records in their FOIA libraries and maintaining that. But I don't have insight into how each of the agencies on FOIA online handle that.
All right. Thank you. So in terms of OIP issuing guidance to mandate that agencies disclose logs as open data, is there any conversation with OMB to coordinate and reinforce the message about proactive disclosures being open data and not closed or proprietary documents? So is there any conversation with OMB?
So certainly, as with other agencies, we will continue to work with and collaborate with OMB, and OMB's been very supportive and involved, especially with FOIA.gov and the Wizard, where this is we're starting to develop this guidance, and so we appreciate the partnership and we'll continue to work with OMB.
Great, thank you. Would OIP consider opening an RFI on a release to one, release to all policy?
Yeah, like I said, we look forward to co-creation and continued discussions on things like the release to one, release to all. So certainly we'll consider everything.
All right. Fair. Thank you. Nice. do you currently track which records have been requested 3 or more times? Or do you track which records have been released 3 or more times?
So the rule of 3 that's codified in the statute is that records that have been requested and released 3 times, the disclosable portions should be posted in agencies' FOIA libraries. And those metrics of what the number of records agencies post are captured in the annual FOIA report. And then also, as far as tracking how agencies are doing it and keeping agencies and keeping ourselves accountable to how we identify those frequently requested records, we do ask agencies in the proactive disclosure portion of their Chief FOIA Officer report to report on the different ways they track for frequently requested records.
Great, so it's captured in the FOIA Officer report. This is a very broad question, so maybe it's not specific. So it doesn't seem specific to OIP, but do all FOIA officers or offices have secure internet connections and other capabilities that allow for full-time remote work? And if not, are there plans to invest in that capacity? Again, that seems much more broad than just OIP, but if you have any insight to that.
Certainly, and I think you know, a lot of agencies adjusted during the pandemic. Some were more telework ready and remote ready than others, but I know a lot of agencies have overcome those hurdles. But different agencies have different challenges as far as remote and telework, particularly when it comes to classified work. But other than that, I don't have any specific insight to which agencies and what their laptop situation is.
All right, that's fair. We have another commenter was asking about the plans for staffing and the ability to acquire more analysts to process FOIA requests, sort of across government. I know this has been a huge issue, but this questioner is asking about just increased capacity and increased staffing and any petition to acquire more analysts.
Again, I think that's going to vary by agency. The agency is certainly one of the things I know the COCACI has observed is that agencies have, in the technology committee, agencies have varying degrees and varying access to the resources and varying needs. And so each agency is responsible for examining the resources they have. And of course, resources is something that we often find is limited in a lot of different areas.
That makes sense, yeah. 2 more questions, actually, and one of them is directed to Eric Stein, but let me ask Bobby you the other one first. So why aren't the showcases open to the public and to the press, and who does it serve to keep them government only, or between the government and the vendors? Make the next gen showcases.
Eric, do you want to take that one, or you want me and
Sure.
Bobby?
I think it's a good point. This is our second time doing the showcases, so I think the first time it was such a success, and Aline, as you just pointed out, we actually have more interest this time, which is very exciting. So a couple thoughts come to mind. First, there's a process for RFIs, for requests for information, that agencies follow. So there were some steps and procedures we had to follow in getting just the request for information out and hosting the event. I also, I just checked, we posted not only the responses from the vendors that came in, but the videos as well, proactively released to make sure that we're open and transparent about what the vendors were sharing, what they were presenting, and what the federal agencies saw. I think one of the main purposes, or 1 or 2 of the main objectives of these sessions, are to raise awareness among federal agencies of the capabilities that are being offered by different vendors in the private sector. And this was a challenge in 2022 because we're still in the pandemic. You couldn't have your more traditional trade shows or conferences or events. Plus, those types of events cost money, need space. It comes into it was a whole bunch of challenges that would have prohibited us from having like a physical event, or maybe if we had done something like that, we could have included the public. But it was also discussed how as the technology committee, we wanted to use technology to enable these discussions via WebEx or online platforms and discussions. And that's what we were able to do in 2022, and we're trying to do again in 2024. So I think, as these showcases go on, if there's a 3.0 or if there's a future iteration, there are a lot of different options available. But I believe the intent this time around is to also release the papers released by the vendors, to release the videos that are made. And I'd also just mention, and I forgot to mention this during the technology committee section before update. Please share feedback and ideas. And this goes for everyone here, whether you're in a FOIA program, a member of the public, a member of the private sector. Submit feedback to either COCACI or the technology committee directly or through OGIS or OIP. We do receive it, we do discuss it, and it does inform decisions or just discussions about what the technology is going to do. We don't receive a lot of feedback, believe it or not, outside of these sessions. So I would encourage, if there are thoughts or ideas, especially like this one, to share them so they can be discussed and considered, because sometimes we're just doing the best we can with what we have and the time periods we have as well. So those are my thoughts on the showcase question. I don't know, Bobby and Alina, if you have anything else before I turn to the other question directed to me.
No, I don't have anything to add. I think you did a great job answering that. Bobby?
No, thanks, Eric. I think you mentioned, but if not, we also will be posting the videos that the vendors are going to use during the event.
Yeah, and they're worth watching. They were very helpful. I mean, at the time 2 years ago, agencies were really struggling to find what they're going to use for their case management system. There was several agencies that found themselves not having tools available, so it helped to inform the decision making. Whether or not one of those vendors was selected, I don't know. It depends on the agency process of acquiring technology, but it was important. It was a great opportunity, as we have right now with all the discussions of AI, advanced technology, and so forth, to kind of figure out how will agencies and the government deal with the challenge of increased requests, growing volumes of data, and so forth. So I'm going to turn to the question. Alex, thank you for the kind note, and also nice seeing you also during Sunshine Week. The questions are: has the adoption of a release to one, release to all policy for proactive disclosing records requested under FOIA resulted in cost savings for the State Department as a result of publishing records in higher consistent demand? I don't have a figure for cost savings. The one cost avoidance that comes to mind is that instead of having FOIA employees check to see and analyze, oh, well, is this request identical to this one or close to this one, by adopting release to one, release to all, we could at least not spend that time doing that analysis, and instead just focus on posting content to our foia.state.gov public library or reading room, virtual reading room. So I don't know. The next question is, any idea how much? No, not outside of the cost avoidance I just mentioned. Has it resulted in improved response times or other process improvements? We have incorporated and looked at how requests, how we could point requesters to information already released. So that's helpful. By having more information and content on our virtual reading room, it allowed us to also experiment and try new ideas and process approaches, such as the ones I presented during Sunshine Week with the artificial intelligence FOIA pilots that we recently had. So that would be how I'd respond to that question. And then how you or the technology committee created and shared best practices for the adoption of release to one, release to all for other agencies? No, but we've discussed it a few times. Some of the themes that emerge from those discussions include that every agency is structured a little bit differently. So some agencies have an IT or technology component embedded in their FOIA programs. Others have to partner with a CIO or chief information officer shop or technology office. Some don't have the means of doing the types of postings at all, or it's a challenge. So I think the solution or the challenge is going to vary by agency. So have we created or shared best practices? I take it back. We have shared best practices among the working group, but we haven't created or shared a best practices document. And I think I would go back to what Bobby previously said as to different things that the government, DOJ, and others are going to look at, OGIS and so forth, on what could be done in this space. There was recently mention of state's practice of release to one, release to all by OGIS and OIP in a memo that went out, or I remember something that went out recently, and I believe that could also be looked at as encouraging agencies to, whenever possible and feasible, to also consider adopting this approach to proactive disclosures or release to one, release to all.
Eric, thank you so much for all of that. Dan Levinson, do we have any other questions that had come in during our time in chat that we need to run through?
I see comments, but no specific questions.
Okay. Well, I see one additional comment that the commenter hopes that agencies will consider posting technologies
you, yes.
using at their FOIA pages along with associated costs. Maybe that's the one you're referring to.
Yes.
Thank you to our colleague Martha Murphy, who just posted our email address again. If anyone wants to send comments, cfo-council@nara.gov. We're reminded also there's one more chat comment. Will DOJ do an open gov plan with stakeholders as it used to? I guess that's directed towards Bobby.
Thank you. Yep. Like I said, we are committed, and our office has been involved in a lot of initiatives that go to open government and the national action plans. This will be something we'll consider, and I'll take back to the department as those plans involve more than just FOIA.
Thank you, Bobby. I appreciate that. So let's open up our telephone lines. Bobby, are you ready for that?
Let's do it.
I'm going to ask you in a second to please provide instructions for any of our listeners on WebEx how to ask a question or make a comment via telephone. I want to invite our commenters to remember to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please introduce yourself by name and affiliation before you speak and before you begin speaking, and we will take it from there. So Candace, over to you, please.
As we begin the public comment period, please click the raise hand icon located at the bottom of your screen to join the queue. If you're not using WebEx audio today, you may press #2 on your telephone keypad to join the queue. You'll be given 3 minutes to make your remarks. To assist you, there is a timer on the right side of your screen. It will begin counting down as soon as you start your remarks, and you will hear a 5-second warning when your time is up. You'll hear a tone when your line is unmuted, at which time you may begin your comments.
So Candace, do we have any speakers waiting to be heard?
We do. I'm opening the line for Alex Howard.
Thank you.
I am so grateful to you all for offering such wholesome and thoughtful answers. I know I peppered you with questions, but I've been enjoying the opportunity to do so forever. You all have made me a much better FOIA nerd, and I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to work with you on the FOIA Advisory Committee as a member, as opposed to your frequent public commenter back at McGowan. Thank you all for your service. Thank you all for the readouts from the subcommittees. I am just over the moon to have gotten to sit here and listen to all of this. I think, as expressed, I hope that you will come back into session in person in DC once again. But I'm grateful that this flexibility has allowed people to weigh in from all around the country and all around DC, and hopefully that will continue in a hybrid fashion. So I just wanted to recognize that off the top. Bobby, I'm very grateful to hear that you are open to the idea of stakeholder engagement around a new plan. I know that many different agencies have continued to do plans. The Department of Justice hasn't done a new one since 2016, but in the context of a new national action plan, I'm hearing and seeing some renewed activities around this. As you know, I was frustrated in the end of 2022 when, although you were part of the co-creation process, the department chose 3 existing initiatives for the commitments for the National Action Plan. The Wizard, the business standards, thank you for taking comment on those. You'll be hearing from us about that. And improving the toolkit. But you didn't take anything from the civil society side, bringing in recommendations from the committee or from the public comments that came in. Would consider using the discretion of the department to add an open government challenge commitment, which is allowed under the Open Government Partnership, to add some more co-created commitments later this year, maybe coming out of this plan, that you could then be implementing in 2025. Because one thing Dan didn't mention is that the current plan is going to end at the end of this year, and there won't be a new one in place until the end of 2025. And in the meantime, there'll continue to be a lot of opportunity for the extraordinary staff you have at all the different agencies, to continue to re-engage, to revive the bonds and the relationships and the interstitial tissue that characterized a lot of the very fruitful efforts around open government a decade ago that you all were involved in directly. Would you be willing to submit a challenge commitment or two or three, to the National Action Plan, independent of whatever GSA decides to do, to show the department's commitment to this? Because I know you personally have done a lot. And I guess that music means I'm done.
Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the kind words, and very much in favor, and will continue to really endorse stakeholder engagement. The three commitments that we were very proud to have in the National Action Plan were very much at the very beginning of things we were working on. So I was glad that we were able to get them in the last National Action Plan, and look forward to the many different ways we can engage stakeholders and where we want to build on those efforts.
Bobby, thanks. Daniel York, anything you want to add to any of this discussion regarding the next action, National Action Plan?
No, not much beyond what Bobby said. Is we'll continue keep on the lookout for the Federal Register as well as the OpenGov Civ Listserv for opportunities to participate in the current stakeholder engagement sessions and future sessions for the 6th National Action Plan.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you. Candace, do we have any other callers?
We have one more person in queue. Jackson, I'm opening your line.
This is Jackson. At the last FOIA Advisory Committee meeting, I talked about 3 things. First, rights of civilian employees to free, individual DOJ representation in FOIA litigation, gone bad, citing 28 CFR at 50.15. Second, unauthorized records disposition complaints to NARA. Third, exploding FOIA fee awards due to agencies' obdurate behavior. On civilian employee individual legal representation in FOIA, quote, whenever the court orders the production of any agency records improperly withheld from the complainant and assesses against the United States reasonable attorney fees and other litigation costs, the special counsel shall promptly initiate a proceeding to determine whether disciplinary action is warranted. That is 5 U.S.C. 552, F.I. This is true even if the government ultimately produces records during litigation and then prevails on summary judgment, having produced ordered records during litigation. So, if you were an agency employee involved in a messy FOIA litigation where someone may have helped you with inaccurate sworn declarations, or where records were altered or where records were destroyed, you may seek immediate free, individual DOJ legal representation in a closed case before a plaintiff files a fee petition with the court. Your agency counsel may have already obtained separate DOJ representation. FOIA is not exempt from other federal laws, with serious consequences. Civilian employees must therefore protect their own interests. Litigation costs. I read that litigation cases are exploding and that attorney and cost fee awards above $100,000 are increasing because of agencies' obdurate behavior or bad behavior, intentionally prolonging litigation for years hoping plaintiffs will quit. In one case on pacer.gov, the agency admitted that a FOIA officer's sworn declaration was materially false, and the FOIA officer admitted under oath that he or she had altered records during litigation. An agency manager admitted that he or she had destroyed records, despite the agency being given 5 legal notices identifying records, and with notices to preserve records for judicial review. The agency cited Perry v. Block, D.C. Circuit 1982, as a reason for the court not referring matters to the special counsel, but in Perry the court had not ordered the production of records, and the court offered an extensive apology to, quote, express our disapproval of the government's behavior vis-a-vis Mr. Perry, stating that the government acted in a disjointed, dilatory, and fitful fashion. In one recently decided case in the District Court of Columbia, NOMS versus DOD's Department of the Army, the court awarded over $111,000 due to DOD's obdurate behavior, which only amounted to withholding documents to force litigation. This is far less than the abhorrent behavior described in the Pacer.gov case cited above. And total billable fees were only reduced 18% in NOMS versus DoD. Also, Department of Army did not place its civilian employees at risk of referral to special counsel, whose decisions must be executed without recourse. FOIA is not exempt from other federal statutes. Civilian employees must therefore protect their own interests. Thank you.
Okay, Jackson, no identification or affiliation, but thank you for all your comments. Candace, anything else that, anyone else waiting to make any comments?
We have no further people in queue.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, does that bring us to the end of public comments?
Yes, I believe so. I'm just gonna, let's triple check with Dan Levinson to make sure we didn't miss any other comments in the chat. Dan, did we miss anything else?
Yes, there's another question for Bobby. Given state's great experience and example in a release to one, release to all, would OIP consider adopting the approach, I guess, across the government or for the Department of Justice? Yeah, would OIP consider adopting that approach for the Department of Justice?
So OIP, my office that processes for the senior leadership offices, we practically do a release to one, release to all. And if you look at our FOIA library, you can see the wealth of postings that we've been doing of our disclosures. And the components of the department were decentralized, just like other agencies have varying numbers of requests and types of records they get. And so it varies the level of proactive disclosure that we do beyond the statutory requirements. Of course, we meet the statutory requirement, and as the Attorney General has encouraged all agencies, we strive to go well beyond it because we do believe that proactive disclosures help is the most efficient and effective way of informing the public of the government's activities.
Oh, and just briefly, there was one further question. Could you speak to this? This questioner is requesting a link to the quote release to one, release to all policy.
So what we like I said, the Attorney General's guidelines and our guidance encourages agencies to strive as close as they can to a release to one, release to all policy. But we a number of years ago conducted a pilot of a number of agencies attempting to implement a proactive disclosure policy of release to one, release to all. And there was there was a couple of challenges that were identified in that process, but a lot of also benefits. And so that report is available on OIP's website under, I believe, the report section. There's a link to the pilot, and you can see both how the agencies implement the policy and the findings based off of their 6 months of trying a release to one, release to all.
Great, thank you. I believe those are the only questions I see.
Great, thank you so much, Dan. Really appreciate it. And thanks, Bobby, for answering all of that.
Absolutely,
Okay.
thank you.
So I think that concludes our public comments section. Thank you, Candace, for advancing the slides. Bobby, over to you for some closing remarks.
Thank you, Alina, and thanks everyone for joining us for a really great meeting, vibrant discussion, and special thanks to Daniel York and our committee co-chairs, Eric, Michael, and Abhi for the great presentations and insight to the work that they're doing. And special thanks to all the FOIA professionals who are volunteering their time to serve on the council's 2 committees and for all the great work you're doing. Just one last plug, please do reach out to us. We've already, I believe, gotten some volunteers coming in. Please do reach out to us if you would like to participate in either committee. And with that, Alina, I'll hand it back over to you to close us.
Yeah, thank you, Bobby. And by the way, no prohibition on volunteering for both committees. And also just another plug for any volunteers that would like to help us create the Chief FOIA Officers Council Charter and Bylaws. We have 1 volunteer so far, so I hope that we can get several others to get a good working group together. We hope to see all of you again this fall for another CFO Council meeting. Please stay tuned for further announcements on an exact date and time, as well as registration information. Thanks again to all of you for joining us today. I hope everyone and their families remain safe, healthy, and resilient. And with that, we are concluding our meeting. Thanks for joining us today.
That concludes our conference. Thank you for using Inteller Events. You may now disconnect.